Well, in that case, good morning to everyone on this. I think we're up to the 6th editions of our A2i Talk. My name is Jakob Braun, and I'm the CEO of Access to Innovation. And today it's an honor having the ambassador, Mette Nørgaard, with us all the way from Tanzania. We might end up with a bit of a wobbly line as we are moving on with a telephone, as I understand from you, Mette. But we will do our best to move along with this. Now, the purpose of our A2i Talks is, well, getting the recent news updates when we talk about innovation and partnerships, especially in an African context. And whom better to reach out than our Danish ambassador. So, Mette, thank you so much for taking your time today. And hopefully we'll have some inspirations from your sides on how to tackle innovation and partnership in a developing country context. It's usually we go about this with about 20-25.
I think Jakob lost his connection there. He's on mute still.
Yeah, well, back online. So it's all, not only Tanzania having a problem with the internet connection, it also seems to be relevant.
I was just about to say I thought my line was the wobbly one.
Yeah. Apologies on that. Okay, but hopefully you got some part of my introduction. We got short time, so usually it's with a presentation of 20-25 minutes from our keynote speaker today, Mette Dissing-Spandet, ambassador in Tanzania. And then we move along following with some introduction, also the opening for discussions and clarifying questions. As usual, we try to, we record this A2i Talk, as we often see that there's quite some keen interest in following in reaching out and understanding some of the discussions that we had on the way. So that's the format of our today's session. So without any further ado, over to you, Mette. And again, thank you so much for taking your time.
Thank you, Jakob, and thank you all for your interest in Tanzania and your willingness to spend time with us today. It's an extremely interesting time for Tanzania. I would say that we are sort of in between various important phases, possibly, and we have a government that needs to make some really, really important choices as for Tanzania's future these years. I had hoped that I could also talk about important choices that the Danish government is about to take about our next phase in the bilateral cooperation, but regrettably we are not ready. We will be ready in a week or two, but I can try to explain a bit about that later on. But it's a bit of a shame that we can't combine the two today. Jacob, do you hear me? You look a bit reluctant or something.
No, I'm all good, thank you. I'm struggling.
So it's only the content you don't like.
Yeah,
okay. Great. Anyway, my name is Mette Dissing-Spandet. I'm the Danish ambassador to Tanzania, and I've been here for 2 years. And I think it's fair to say that during those 2 years, many things have happened that nobody expected. And I'm looking very much forward to talking about that today. And also, I know some of you have specific Tanzania experiences, and some of you are even in Tanzania right now. So I hope we can also hear a bit about your perspectives. But we've agreed that I would talk a bit about the general political situation, a bit about the investment climate, the business climate, and then of course also a bit on innovation and technology. And then Jacob and Access to Innovation have challenged us to come up with 3 pieces of advice for Danish companies wanting to enter the Tanzanian market. And obviously we will get to those towards the end. But let me talk about the rapidly changing political environment first, which is of course always something you can't separate from the investment climate. And I guess I think at least in the Danish perception, the Danish government perception, the political environment of the last 6 years have actually also heavily impeded the investment climate that used to be a bit more vibrant. So in that sense, obviously, investment climate and political climate go hand in hand. But let me start out with the fact that the former president Magufuli died in March. He had just been re-elected in October 2020, and his first period had been, his first phase in government had been focusing on economic growth, on large infrastructure projects, on cleaning up the public sector and fighting corruption. He was very much inward looking, insisting on Tanzania being able to fix everything themselves, and that Tanzania really didn't need help from outside or need cooperation with the outside world in order to move forward with rapid growth. It was something that was very much felt. This is my first ambassador's position, but also the very routine ambassadors, the very experienced ambassadors, found it very difficult to engage with the government side. It was completely different in the business sector, the civil society, private press sector, but engaging with government was a challenge. And it even was for the Nordic countries. I think the president and the ministers never miss an opportunity to say how special the relationship with the Nordic countries are. We've been there since the 60s, and we've always been good and close partners and friends of Tanzania. But even we felt it. We got the meetings, but engaging in substantive matters were a bit difficult because the number one man was insisting that they didn't really need us much. We, at the same time, it would be fair to say that the space for civic society, for democracy, for opposition was limited, and that press freedom wasn't a big interest, so to say, for the president. So we saw what we would call relatively severe setbacks on the human rights and good governance setting. And then finally, we would also remember President Magufuli for his and for Tanzania's way of handling the COVID pandemic. They started up, and I think we more or less forgot it, but they started up with a fairly mainstream approach that for us was completely understandable. They did the classic stuff as to encouraging distancing, hand sanitation, wearing masks, but fully rejected the shutdowns that the neighboring countries did do. The argument was that Tanzania is a country where many people are living hand to mouth, subsistence living. You earn your money the day you use them. So if we were to shut down, then these people would basically starve, was the argument, and they needed to keep the wheels moving, so to speak. Later on, it got a bit more eccentric, and I think that's a discussion for another day, but it definitely meant that Tanzania was more and more isolated, certainly also with the neighboring countries that then bore some of the lack of containment of the disease in Tanzania, because there was a lot of imported disease from Tanzania into neighboring countries. So that was the situation when Magufuli died. There was a lot of hype, I think, when he came in, but when he passed, it was a bit of a different situation. So we now have the sixth phase government president, Samia Suluhu Hassan. She took over on the 19th of March. I think even though she was the running mate of Magufuli in the October elections, she was not meant to be president. But of course, she was elected to take over in precisely situations such as this. But she is a woman, and I think it would be a fair assessment that Tanzania would have never elected a woman directly. I stand corrected, so please fill in later. But she is a woman, she's also Zanzibari, and she's a Muslim. So she's a minority in many ways, and she's also soft-spoken. So she's very much the opposite, I would say, of her predecessor. And she started very much as such. She had some very clear statements on an approach, a different approach to COVID. She wanted to improve the investment climate. That had been a desire for many years, but she also indicated that she was willing to tackle very specific challenges. She made clear commitments to international re-engagement. They already started filling up their multilateral delegations with people, so they're actively leaning out. She's traveling. She's the whole sentiment around the government on international engagement has changed very rapidly. And also nationally, she signaled more openness, more dialogue, and even, which was very different, a desire to listen to opposite viewpoints that would then improve the policies of the country. She also said she would build bridges, that she would mend the very sort of the wounds that probably flew from the very rough, I guess, leadership under the previous president. She has held a lot of dialogue meetings with senior citizens, with youth, with religious leaders. And in the diplomatic corps, we immediately got a lot better access and a lot better dialogue. And it was, to be honest, also interesting to read the newspapers again. So many changes very fast, all of them mostly in words, and no systemic reform, but we all started becoming cautiously optimistic. So would we see action on all these impressive promises? Would Tanzania go back to the Tanzania I think we all had known for the last 60 years, outward looking, finding common solutions to common problems, engaging, seeking dialogue? And would we see Tanzania leaning into also conflict settlements in the region now that we have even a non-international armed conflict right at the Tanzanian border in the south? So what would then happen? And I think after the first 100 days, we were fairly optimistic. And now, within the last few weeks, we've seen a full rejection of looking at amendments to the constitution. The thing with the constitution is that it's very much favoring the ruling party, and it gives the president a very wide space to do whatever he or she finds proper. So a full rejection of changing the constitution, and also the main candidate of the opposition, Freeman Mbowe, who's the leader of Chadema, was arrested in July. And now we have this, the sentiment has changed, the feeling, the bubbly optimism is somehow stopped a little bit. And that could be an interim thing. We could get back to the optimism, but as for now, I think it's very difficult to see where the political reform track or the political engagement, re-engagement track is going. So there's no doubt that the president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, is facing very severe challenges that she needs to tackle head on, but also that she needs time to consolidate her power. She was not, as I said, meant to be president, and now she needs to find her way in a very heavy machinery borne by various actors in society, and it'll be very interesting to see how she manages. And I think I've only met her a few times, but those that know her well says that we certainly shouldn't underestimate her. So it'll be interesting to follow the next steps. So that's a bit on the political side. I'm a bit more certain that the promises made on reform in the private sector will be actually delivered, be implemented. This desire to make Tanzania more attractive for international investments will be acted upon. So you can come back to me in a year's time if this is not happening, but that is certainly the clear impression we get. We have seen very specific, I mentioned that already, very specific statements as to what they would be willing to change. Some of the things that we've, the international community and the private sector in Tanzania and the international investors have been tackling for a long time is one, tax collection has been brutal. It's been more equipped to kill companies rather than to keep them going and provide sustained income to the government. So they've indicated they would look into how to, in a more balanced way, collect taxes. They've promised easier access to work permits, faster, but also for a longer duration of time. We've already seen bureaucratic changes to the extent that you can now Did you lose me?
Yeah, you're back now. Thank you.
When did you lose me?
10 seconds ago.
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they're working on these. They've made very firm commitments on the roadmap, the blueprint, its roadmap, and on tax collection and on work permits. And that's something that has made it really difficult for companies. We've even seen Danish companies close shop and go back because they simply couldn't make ends meet, mostly due to very regrettable interaction with Tanzanian authorities in direct contravention of what the government has been saying all along. So fairly positive when it comes to reform into the private sector and being more welcoming towards international investors. And then we could maybe touch a bit about on innovation directly. So one thing is that they've decided that they will make an investment strategy, and a strategy on I think it's called technology and innovation. And one of the reasons that I'm also a bit optimistic in this area is the fact that much policy development and real reform in Tanzania is carried by people, and they've put in charge of this area a very, I find, a very engaging and very competent minister called Faustine Gulile. And he will, I see him leading and taking a strong hand in making innovation and technology steps moving forward, so that also the government could be more conducive, more helpful in making innovation happen. Also recognizing that if they are to in any way maintain the impressive growth rates we've seen, I think Tanzania have had some of the highest growth rates in the world over the last 10, 15 years. If they are to maintain those, they need serious action on innovation. So it's not only we think it's a nice thing to do, it's also a need to political agenda for the government. There is a brand new 5-year development plan for Tanzania. They also talk about a competitive industrial economy driven by innovation and infrastructure development, access to financing, and so forth. So the terminology is certainly the right one. And we certainly believe that there will be a good space for Danish core competencies in innovation on health, on agriculture, on fruits and milk production, and certainly also on energy. So can I maybe then talk a bit about, and I don't want to talk too long, I hope we can also discuss a bit after. So how do we see the innovation landscape in Tanzania? Just to be honest with you, it's not something that we are very engaged in as an embassy, so I hope you can possibly also inform us a bit. But we know that the digital landscape in Tanzania is one of the fastest growing in East Africa. On the Global Innovation Index, Tanzania has gone from number 123 in 2013 to number 88 in 2020. And it's clear that it's also helpful for Tanzania that it has a very youthful population. 2/3 of the population is below the age of 25. And I think they've been an independent force in driving digital innovation. I think this is not particular to Tanzania, but we also have 2019 numbers showing that 82% of the population has a mobile phone, that 24 million Tanzanians have active mobile accounts. So that's almost half of the Tanzanians, and also that the worth of digital financial transactions is half the size of the GDP. So quite a lot is going on and a lot of progress. And we do see, as I said, a lot of engagement, a lot of political will in this direction. But of course, there's still key challenges that needs to be solved. One of them is the lack of necessary skills. Another one is that there's not access to capital. Maybe that's where we could come in. And thirdly, policy and the policy framework is simply not in place. And there is a lot generally, and that's not only for innovation, but generally Tanzania is not good in engaging all parts of the sector when they develop rules and regulations. And that's certainly also something that's been lacking here. We need to make sure that the rule book under development is also fit for purpose when it comes to innovation. And we of course hope that this strategy coming up will handle those 3 challenges, but we simply don't know yet. So where does that leave Danish companies or Danish actors? Clearly, there is a lot of unused potential for bringing innovation into play for socio-economic challenges in Tanzania. We talked about that in the beginning. So we have some general arguments in favor of investing in Tanzania. One of them is that they have very good market access in the region because they're members of both the East African community and the SADC, the Southern African counterpart to this. So they have, in the actual meaning of the word, a very unique access to both markets. They are the only country that would be covered by both rule books. Also, Tanzania is bigger than Kenya, Uganda, and Rwanda all together. So there is a very easy access for land that is arable, but also usable for many productive ventures from agriculture to tourism. On innovation, the market is young, but it's still going. We have a number of innovation hubs already established. We had good cooperation with Tanzania Startup Association, which I would think is also a good good entry point for Danish businesses in ideating startups with potential for growth and scaling. And then finally, we've had at least 2 multilateral development organizations, UN agencies that could be very interesting partners in this. The WFP, World Food Programme, and the UNDP have very active work ongoing with this, and I know that Access to Innovation is coming down with a delegation later on, and I was thinking that maybe we should try to hook you up with those also, because that's a bit of a different part of the innovation landscape that you've previously engaged with, I think. And as I started out by saying, I had hoped that we could talk a lot about how the Danish engagement, the Danish bilateral engagement from the government side could then interplay with the expectations from the private sector, but it's simply too soon. We are, as some of you probably know, on the towards the very end of a bilateral country program of over 2 billion Danish kroner. Now we're working on health, on macroeconomic features, good financial governance, on agriculture, business development, and finally human rights and good governance. But we don't know. You may have all seen that there is a new development policy agreed by a big majority in the Danish parliament, and that is work is still ongoing as to the specific implementation of that. What that would mean for our daily lives here at the embassy, we don't know yet. We should know within a week or two. But in that sense, we would have to brief you later on. I think that's it for me. I should also give the 3 pieces, and we were discussing, as I think they're fairly straightforward, but my good colleagues insisted that these are the best we can give because they're really hard to understand for Danes. We've all grown up in a system with efficiency and with a sort of a core trust in each other. So therefore, we say some things that may feel fine, but we really need to work on 3 aspects in our Danish mentality. So even though Tanzania is now a middle-income country, half of the population is still poor after UN standards, and the education level is not high. So you would need to expect systemic hiccups here and there. So I would ask, and I'm struggling to find this word in English, muligheder. You need to be able to sort of engage and embrace that things are never going to be smooth. But with this right approach and this understanding, you'll be fine. Also, embrace yourself when it comes to time. Sometimes you can do things fast, but you have to expect delays. And then in the end, and this is a universal recommendation, I would guess, you need to know your partners really well. We do surprisingly a lot of work here at the embassy trying to clear out disagreements or misunderstandings with Danish companies and their their Tanzanian partners. I think that's it for me. I hope it made sense. And I'm more than happy to answer all the questions I can. But I would also, of course, be interested in hearing your assessment on how things are going. Thank you.